Okay, I'm not going to have you answer these questions on the sheet of paper. This is a slide that I showed last time. And I mentioned that this just demonstrates how complicated identity can be. That all these different things like race, ethnicity, nationality, culture, and citizenship are all terms used to describe different groups of people. But all of them, even race and ethnicity, are socially constructed. They're not biological. And a majority of the students said that they hadn't learned about this concept of the social construction of race. So that's what I hope to help you understand today. These are some of the terms that get used when referring to race: white, black, Asian, native. Some examples of terms used to describe ethnicity, like Jewish and Latino. For nationality, mentions of specific countries, Mexican, Irish, Japanese as examples. Culture can be any term. There's lots of different terms that have their own subcultures. And then citizenship has to do with political or legal affiliation. So just terms that we use to help us understand different groups in society. Now, Olmi and Wenant, Michael Olmi and Howard Wenant, are two sociologists who wrote a whole book just about the concept of race. And even though they wrote a whole book, this is their definition, the shortest definition they gave in that book. They say that race is a concept which signifies and symbolizes social conflicts and interests by referring to different types of human bodies. Now, I don't expect you to know what signifies means, but I'll help explain. It just means that it's meant to bring attention to the social conflicts and interests of different groups. And it does this through this concept of race by describing people as having different types of human bodies. Here's another aspect of the concept of race. This one is by Eduardo Pagan. He's a historian. Probably don't try to write all this down. Maybe get the point of what he's trying to say. Racial categories have not always been defined by an empirical reality, but at times by a perceived reality. In other words, the racialization of an individual or group did not always correspond with the skin pigmentation, but drew from dominant ideas about behavior, clothing, music, culture, and symbols. Because behavior and cultural expression could be altered and manipulated, there were moments when race categories became elastic and unstable because of the time, place, and context of the particular social dialogue between peoples. So it's saying that when we look at history, we see that these ideas of race have evolved or developed across time. They haven't been fixed the way we think of, when we think of race as biological, we don't think of it changing. But when we look at history, these concepts of race change over time. And it's also adding the fact that because it's associated, if you believe that people of different racial groups speak different, look different, behave different, wear different clothing, etc., then those are, a lot of those things are things that people can, change and try to pass for a different racial group that might have a higher status in society. And so, or there's entire groups that when later on we're going to talk about the Californios, the Spanish Mexican and indigenous inhabitants of California before it became part of the United States. And there we learned how, even though they were the elite of California, were very sort of racially mixed, they still created a category of elite people that would claim to be Spanish, i.e. white and European. And so this is what Eduardo Pagan is getting at, is that um, essentially that these concepts of race change over time, they're not fixed. And there's been moments in history where they can really change based on these beliefs about how race is manifested by people or groups of people. There is a website called understandingrace.org that is created by the American Anthropological Association that is very helpful at helping one understand these concepts of the social construction of race. So if you're not familiar with this concept, you have questions that aren't answered, this website is very helpful to make sense of it, make sense of this idea. There's also this short video. I'm trying to save time today, so I'm not going to play it. It's called One Species by the Smithsonian, but it's essentially about the idea that humans came from Africa and that between 200,000 to 100,000 years ago, humans were leaving Africa for other parts of the world. And so you have people going to the Middle East, to Eastern Europe, to Asia, to Europe and East Asia, and then eventually to the Americas from about 40 to 10,000 years ago. And that connects with the Americas, when humans arrived to the Americas, and then we start talking about Native Americans. But all right, there's another way to help understand this when we look at genetics. And race does not exist according to biology or genetics. Here is an explanation by the people who created the Human Genome Program. And they say DNA studies do not indicate that separate classifiable subspecies or races exist within modern humans. While different genes for physical traits, such as skin and hair color, can be identified between individuals, no consistent patterns of genes across the human genome exist to distinguish one race from another. There also is no genetic basis for divisions of human ethnicity. People who have lived in the same geographic region for many generations may have some alleles in common, but no allele will be found in all members of one population and in no members of any other. And so this is the people who mapped human DNA, explaining that there is no gene for race. So race is a social construction, meaning, we made it up. It's not a biological reality. It is a social construction based on phenotypes. Phenotypes are things that have to do with our appearance, like our skin color, our hair color, our eye shape, our nose shape, the texture of our hair, etc. Those are phenotypes. And so it's a social construction based on those phenotypes. Now, the fact that race is not a biological reality doesn't mean that people's lives haven't been severely affected historically and in the present because of society's beliefs about race. And so, we live that reality, even though it's based on a social construction. So there's this paradox that race as we know it has no deterministic biological basis. Yet, all the same, race is so powerful that it can have life or death consequences. Let's see if there's questions about this concept.